And basically our goal for you this evening is to be updated on some of the new things that are going on in the shelter and have a good feel for the protocols we follow, so that when it comes time to shelter horses, we're all on the same page and we have their best interests and our safety in mind. Couple of things to review. June is a busy month for Napa Cart, and if you haven't done so in a while, if you go to the Napa Cart website, we do have an events calendar and all of the events are up there. This coming Saturday, we will see many of you down at the Napa Valley Horsemen's Association at 1200 Foster Road to go ahead and do some of the skills portion of tonight's meeting. And we've got a nice lineup for you. We're going to be outside. We're going to rotate through some different stations. We will be following the county COVID protocols, so come prepared to do that. And then on June 10th and June 12th, we have our online Pause 911 first aid class. Many of you have signed up for that. I think those are full. But if you are interested, Megan, is there any room in the June 12th one, or is that one full too?
There's still room.
Okay. Yeah. So if you have time on June 12th, which is a Saturday, from 9 to noon, there is a 3-hour companion animal first aid class that's really good. It's sponsored by the Halter Project. So thank you, Julie and Tom Atwood. They are covering tuition for that. And it's a really great sort of nationally known program for small animal first aid. Email info@NapaCart if you want to do that one. On June 12th, also, we have our fire line safety tent deployment. So if you did take fire line safety this year and you are going to be going out in the field, make sure that you have signed up for that, and you will see an invite go out to sign up for slots for that day, time slots. And again, that one's from 9 to noon, and it's at my place, which is 3198 Silverado Trail, and you'll see more information on that. June 17th, we have a community awareness Zoom from 6:30 to 8 p.m. that night. That's mostly for our fellow citizens of the Napa Valley to come and learn about large animal and small animal preparedness. So not a necessary training for all of you, but feel free to join us if you want to get some new tips on being prepared. June 19th, from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, we have our hauling certification. This is our second hauling certification class. For those of you that are interested in doing any evacuation work or any driving of vehicles behind the fire lines, this is a mandatory training if you've not already been inspected. Alan Harrison is running that. If you want to do that, you can email alan@napacart.org. On June 26th, we have our companion animal training, and that is going to be at the Napa County Animal Shelter. That's a skills training that's been rescheduled from earlier in the year, and that one is from 9 to noon, and you'll see more information on that. July 15th and 17th is our comms and dispatch training with CERT, and 15th will be a Zoom, 17th will be a skills, more details to be announced. And then July 31st, 9 to 12 is our livestock. It's an awareness and first aid that's an in-person. That'll be fun. And so as you can see, we're in this final push of training. We really appreciate everybody who's been attending these. And after that, we're just getting ready for fire season. So again, if you have any questions about any of that, you can email info@napacart.org. We're happy to answer questions for you, or you can go to our website and look at the calendar. So without further ado, I want to introduce Sheila Edgington. As many of you know, she is our large animal shelter lead, and she's done some really remarkable work with shelter organization and with a really great leadership team. And she's going to present all sorts of concepts to you tonight. And again, if you have questions, put them in the chat and we'll get them answered. All right, Sheila, I'm going to hand it to you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. So great to see all the names that I recognize and faces. It's great to see you all. I'm glad it's during our training and not earlier during an activation this year, which I think was on all of our minds. But we made it this far, so that's great. Before I start the presentation, I have kind of focused it a lot on updates and new changes that we've made since last year. I know probably not every single person was able to be there at either one of the 2 deployments last year, but it looks like a lot of you are. So I've tried my best to listen to all the suggestions and the complaints that came in during the deployment. And on the off season, I've spent a lot of time with some helpers who I'll acknowledge later on, updating forms and purchasing small things to big things to just kind of streamline, make things safer, make things easier, and kind of get us on track. So if I can be excited about the coming season, at least in that way I am, because I think we're even more prepared and better than we were last year. So let me go ahead here and share my screen. Hopefully this will work properly. I did put some breaks in kind of the change in tone in the presentation, and I thought that would be a great place to maybe stop and answer questions that dealt with that subject matter before we get too far along and kind of lose train of thought of what we were discussing. So hopefully that will work. So let me see if I can share my screen here and move on to the presentation. Can everyone see that? Because I can no longer see the page.
Looks good, Sheila.
Okay, great. So as we've seen a few times, this is looking at east from the Napa Valley Horsemen's property. This is close to where their actual barn is, where their resident horses are. And that's looking at the 2017 fire that was in that piece that was in the eastern part of the valley. Kind of scary. Good reminder, though, of how close the fire came and how close it can come going forward. But this is the introduction to the livestock sheltering. And our mission is to obviously shelter and care for the large animals during one of the declared activations. We are responsible for the coordination and the management of the sheltering, all the needs at the designated sheltering sites. That's another picture, which I believe was from last year, of the Horsemen's sheltering site, with some of the horses there and one either coming or going. Again, kind of already went over this, but please feel free to type in the questions in the comments. I may answer them as the segments go on, but if not, then we can stop then, and I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have. I also have my daughter, Heather, who is my right-hand woman, sitting here next to me off camera, and she'll be able to help with some of those questions as well. I thought I would start out with the phases of the shelter to kind of give you an overarching view of the shelter. So it's a year-round department, if you will. I don't think there's been a month that has gone by where I haven't been doing something in regards to the shelter, even though we were only officially activated for maybe 2 of those months. There's still a lot that's going on behind the scenes. And this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea. Phase 1 obviously is in the spring. It's close to where we are right now. It's where we're kind of prepping the shelter sites. We're getting the enclosures set up, maybe getting the hoses setting up, ensure that all the equipment that we have is ready. Wheelbarrows have tires that aren't flat, that type of stuff. The generators are working if we need them, that sort of thing. The Then we have the actual deployment, where we will notify the volunteers and the leader of the activation. And then that is where we will go and actually set up the shelter, putting the water buckets out and filling them and that type of stuff. Phase 3 is intake. So where we actually start receiving animals, volunteers, kind of the beginning of the incident. And then phase 4 is your actual sheltering and caring for the animals. It's been about 2 weeks, I would say, on most deployments over the past couple of years. They tend to range about 2 weeks. So that's kind of where what I try to plan for is anywhere from a couple days to 2 weeks. Phase 5 is reunification, horses or animals back with their owners. We're trying to secure foster homes for animals that maybe don't have any place to go back to. Maybe their actual barn has burned, or maybe their owners are just not able to go back to those particular sites. I know that Alan and Michelle, I believe, still have some miniature, I believe they're donkeys, at their house that was that came from one of the fires last summer that are still there. And at a barn just a couple houses down from my house, there is one of the horses that was sheltered that still doesn't really have a place to go back to. So it isn't just caring and sheltering the animals during that active part of the disaster. It also can go on for months afterwards. And that's kind of the aftercare piece of it. The funnest part, phase 6 is cleaning up. Kind of have a picture down there of one of the cleanups from last summer. It's cleaning, bleaching everything, not necessarily taking the panels down, but kind of cleaning everything. We are borrowing the shelter sites from the different locations, from the Horsemen's and Valley Brook and Ag for Youth. So where our equipment is being used for other activities than just us. So when we are done, we try to leave it as clean as we possibly can, and you know, their activities will then take over. So try to keep that piece in mind. It isn't our pasture or our shelter site. It's just a place that we are being able to use for a short period of time. Restocking of supplies, taking inventory, all of that fun stuff. We really didn't have a lot of time between the 2 activations last year. So it just kind of reminds us that another one can be, another fire, another disaster can happen close. So as soon as horses are gone, really trying to restock and get everything back in order, ready for the next one that might happen. Phase 7 is usually November, maybe December, depending on the year. That's where we go take down the panels, unhook the hoses, and pack all of these supplies away for the winter before the rain starts. Again, we are leasing, if you will, these locations, so we need to pack everything up. It's, especially at the Horsemen's, it gets very boggy in the rain in that pasture. So we want to make sure that everything is put away and all the panels are in an area where they're not going to be sinking into the ground and then too difficult to put back together the next year. So that's kind of the phases of the shelter, to just kind of give you an idea. It is not just, you know, 2 weeks to 4 weeks during the summer. It's kind of an all year round activities. These are the 3 shelter sites. I think most people should be pretty familiar if you helped out last year. Napa Valley Horsemen's Association is on Foster Road. We have a pasture that they allow us to use in the east part of their property. Valley Brook Equestrian Center, which is on El Centro, so a little in the northern part of Napa. There's quite a few different areas within Valley Brook that we have panels. They themselves have panels that they keep up for their horse shows and other uses. We are able to use those as well as putting up our own panels. That's a great resource for a quick deployment that's early in the season, because they probably already have some infrastructure already set up that they are wonderful and let us use. So Valley Brook is a great resource, as well as the Horsemen's. And then Ag for Youth is on the Horsemen's property. So it's on the northwest corner behind the clubhouse, and they're a great organization for youth. They get fair animals, have the children raise them, and then they sell them at the county fair, and that money goes towards college and stuff. It's a great program. They have the infrastructure for goats and sheep and cows and pigs and all type of livestock animals. They already have those enclosures set up year round. They have been wonderful in allowing us to use some of those during the activation. So that's been a great resource, and it's nice in that the shelter, the horse shelter at the Horsemen's can step in and help with the livestock. But as we'll talk a little bit later on, we really do need someone to kind of take over the lead on the livestock piece of it. And just to go back, a lot of the people that have horses also have other animals. So it is kind of nice to be able to have their animals in a close proximity where they can possibly visit both at the same time. Going to start out with shelter roles. Seems like every year we're kind of redoing or maybe re-looking at the shelter roles and trying to see what fits best. This year was definitely no different. So I've tried to break it out into kind of 3 different areas from a global look, if you will. We have the leads, then we have non-animal people. Doesn't mean that if you know how to, handle horses, that you can't work in that section. But if you are not someone who really should be with the horses or the livestock, we have quite a few roles that you can help with, and we still really need the non-animal handling volunteers. And then we also have the animal care specialists, which are basically the people that will be in actually sheltering the animals. I did a quick just kind of chart here of if this was the Horsemen's and this was Valley Brook, kind of should follow the same structure in terms of the different volunteer areas. And then there's many little facets between or in each of these roles. So this is the leadership role. There's myself, who kind of oversees all of the shelters, and then my daughter, who basically is the assistant, and when I am not available, she's kind of the second person to know most of what's going on. We do have the shelter site leads, which are extremely important. I would not have been able to do half of the stuff that I did this year without Carol. So I want to thank you so much for helping me. Carol is our Valley Brook shelter site lead. So she's basically in charge of Valley Brook. We do need at some point someone that is the main shelter site lead for the Horsemen's. We don't currently have someone, so I am kind of filling in that role. We really need redundancy to that. We had some great people last year who stepped in and helped, hoping to have maybe those same people and more that would help this year. If you are interested in a leadership role, please email me. I will have the information at the end of the slide. We will be meeting to go over things. We have met a couple times in the off season to go over forms, to go over many different brainstorming sessions, which has been wonderful. But we still need more people. So if you are interested, again, please let me know. Ag for Youth, we do need a main person that's kind of, and when I say Ag for Youth, that's really livestock. It may be that we're using the county's livestock area at some point. It's basically just non-equine livestock. And I would like to see at minimum 2 people that kind of can take over that section as leads. And then we have the shelter assistant leads. I would like to have at least 5 for the 2 main equine shelters, and then at least 1 for Ag for Youth. Again, that's minimum. Love to have more, but I would like to see at least that many. And then we'll kind of go into what they do. Myself, kind of self-explanatory, just oversee the different locations. I will be working with Claudia, who's going to be usually the incident commander, the county itself, any donations that come in, or purchasing things directly from the store. I will be seeing that the scheduling of all the shelter sites. The site leads will tell me what they need, but I'll kind of be making sure, or trying my best, that we have all of the different locations covered. Reporting, the nightly statistics. The county and Napa Cart likes to know, how many animals do we have at each location. Really work with dispatch on where the incoming animals should go, especially if it's from our haulers. Knowing what the capacity is at the different shelters and being able to not take time from the shelter leads to have to deal with that aspect. And then obviously taking care of all of the main equipment, the laptops, the generators, the printers, all of the larger equipment. Then the assistant lead, again, is my daughter. She pretty much, sorry, Heather, but pretty much just helps me in any way that I need her. And if we were to have 2 shelter sites open at the same time, especially in the very first couple of days when really you're getting everything honed in and set up, I would probably have her at one of them and myself at the other. Shelter site leads, kind of went over this. They're in charge of that particular location. They don't have to be there from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., but we will have someone there from those times. They basically are overseeing all of the important stuff. The assistant leads, to me, are kind of doing a little bit more of the direct volunteer work. They're kind of making sure that everything is running smoothly. Obviously, that's the site lead's job as well, but they're going to be busy talking with me and doing maybe a little bit of the higher up management, where the assistant leads are kind of the boots on the ground, if you will, making sure that all of the infrastructure is getting set up as well and things are running smoothly. Volunteer coordinator, really didn't have this too much last year, and I think we really needed to have that. That particular person, the way I envision it, is they will have a area that will be manned, hopefully most of the time, if not all the time during deployment, making sure that when volunteers come in, all of the paperwork is signed. If it's during shift change, they will be helping with the orientation presentation, safety talks, making sure that if you're in with the animals, that you're dressed properly. They will be assigning the roles, so they know that there's 4 non-animal handlers and 4 handlers. Then they can kind of assign the roles accordingly, and they will tell each volunteer basically where they are assigned. They will also be handling the human needs area, which would be very close to the volunteer coordinator center. It's basically where the human food, water, shade, and etc. And also manning the owners in and out. Something that we did do last year, but we didn't do it as fully as I would like. We actually have wristbands in the booklet that they sign in and out of. By having somebody manning that station, they will make sure that the wristband with the animal or animals enclosure numbers are on it. Just kind of help us keep track that the owners are staying, with their own animals, and just kind of tighten that. I think we were a little loose in that area last year. The intake specialists, sorry, I'm going to take a drink for a second. They will be very, very busy in the first couple days. They will be doing intake. They will be, greeting the trailers as they come in, ensuring that all the forms are filled out correctly, directing the unloaded horses, where they need to go, what enclosure it is. They, at a later date, maybe when it's not quite as busy, that position will be responsible for all of the data entry into Shelterly, which we'll go over later. And then they will also help with the reunification at the end of the event. Then the actual animal care specialist. These are the people that are going to be feeding, doing water, manure pickup, the biosecurity stations, particularly the one that is for the manure forks. One of the things that we started last year that was great, and I would love to see continue, especially in the afternoons when maybe there's not as much happening, is calling and or texting the owners with maybe a picture of their horse, maybe just a little note saying, hey, Spot is doing great, just, want to let you know. Also, if the personal hay or grain is running low, then that's a great time to kind of give them an update on their animal and remind them that they only have, maybe 1 day left of hay. And is it okay to switch over to carts hay, or do they want to bring down more of their own? And then obviously assisting any vet or vet technician that may be there if asked. if you are going to be a lead, or if you're actually going to be handling the horses, if you're going to be the animal care specialist, we do ask that you also attend any first aid or handling courses that may be offered. I think it's one of the areas that we had set that they were requirements, but when it comes down to it, if we didn't have enough volunteers that had that requirement, we kind of had to accept, you know, what came along, and that worked. That was great. But and a lot of people that were not part of Napa Cart last year, I love seeing their names this year. So they joined, and hopefully they'll get more, you know, understand how CART works a little better, and have this verified requirements makes me feel a lot safer. And also, if you're going to be dealing with the animal piece of it, you know, just the ability, obviously, to halter, to lead, load and unload is great. I'm hoping that we will not be the ones doing that, but having that knowledge is definitely something that I would like to see. The ability to, you know, move around the hay bags, or sorry, the feed bags, the hay, dragging those hoses. It's a physical, definitely physically demanding to be down there where the animals are, and also have, you know, at least 10 years large animal handling experience with multiple horses, preferably not just your own. So that's it for the actual very brief, just barely touching the surface, different roles that we're kind of trying for this year. Are there any specific questions on the roles?
I didn't see anything in chat.
Okay, great. Okay, so now kind of moving on to the actual sheltering piece of it. This was Valley Brook, just kind of an eerie look of the fire behind all these beautiful horses. This is my draft for the timeline. I'm still kind of working on how that's going to work in terms of shifts and that area. It's kind of a moving target. As I talk about here, the way that I'm seeing it is probably 3 shifts a day at 5 hours each. That is the general. It certainly doesn't mean that if you have 3 hours that you can volunteer, that I'm not going to be very thankful that you give me those 3 hours. That's the extra shifts that I was talking about. But I would like to have at least a couple people that that can commit to the 5 hours 3 times a day. That again, we're talking that it may shift depending on the number of animals and where we are in the deployment. The initial intake of the animals, the first couple of days, there's definitely going to be a greater emphasis on intaking of the horses and getting them set up. At pretty much both of the last 2 incidents, we were working either through the night completely, where I never left the shelter, or where I might have gone home at 1 o'clock, but then got called and was back out at 3. Not expecting tons of people to be willing to do that, but there will be hopefully a group of people that are willing and are kind of on call in that initial first 24 to 48 hours at least, because we're getting calls all the time. We don't know where the fire's going, and when we may be called up to go to any of the shelters to be able to intake animals. And then the way I'm envisioning the signups, that will be probably online like they were last year. basically asking, are you a horse experienced person? Are you non? Or do you have any, are you interested in working in the livestock area? I am trying to kind of stay away from, oh, you signed up to only do this, because I want to have the freedom if we get people to come in to also have them maybe do the volunteer intake, even though you know you have horse experience, but that may not be where I need you. So if people can just be understanding and willing to pitch in wherever they're needed, which I definitely saw last year, that would be greatly appreciated. This is a kind of funny looking, but it's a very quick draft of a visual for me to try to kind of get my head wrapped around the different shifts and how they may look. This obviously, this green one being the morning shift, blue being the midday, and the pink being the evening to night shift. You'll see water, food, water, manure, and a wellness check kind of happen in each of the 3 different shifts, if you will. This is not set in stone. This is just kind of how I'm envisioning the best case scenario of how I would like to see it go. If you could come in and do from 9 to noon, great. We will fit all of those in as well. But the more we can stay to the time, the shift times that we have set up, the less orientation and stuff that we'll have to do as one-offs. You'll kind of get the full introduction. So that helps. But again, I'll take whatever time that you have available. One of the things that we seem to do it with the LNU, but we kind of got away from it with the glass fire, was doing those orientations, kind of talk before you kind of go out and start doing your particular assignments. We're definitely going to try to get back into that, where the beginning of each shift we'll go over all of the instructions that we should have on on whiteboards or some type of signage, go over the site layout, explain where the bathrooms are, all of that type of stuff, do a safety briefing, any updates that may have happened maybe from the day before, if you had been there, or a couple of days ago, rules or just the way we do things may change on the fly due to many different reasons. So just kind of having an update to let you know that you were here yesterday and this is the way we did it, but after further review or because something happened, we've decided that now we're going to do it this way. So those are the updates. And then that's when we will assign you, give the volunteers their assignments. For the leads, one of the things that didn't always happen last year was introducing the change in leads to the vets that may be there. If we are lucky enough to have the vet trailer at the Horseman's or wherever it may be, it's beyond wonderful when they are there, but they really need to know who leaders are. We'll talk about how to identify that a little later on. We have new vests that the leads will wear that will stand out. So it will be easy to see who is the lead amongst all the different people. But I really do think if I'm leaving and Heather is taking over as lead, that I walk her over to the vet trailer, introduce her to the vets and the vets to her, kind of go over maybe the horses that are on watch or anything in particular, just kind of make sure that everyone knows each other and the way things are going. And then obviously going over any of the pertinent information of what at least we know is supposed to happen during their shift, And then another thing we didn't do that well last year is the ICS board. I see a generalized ICS board being put up for the main people, and then having a daily one. So I may be the shelter site lead for horsemen's, but I'm not there that day. So Heather would be listed as the shelter site lead for that particular shift. So keeping good track and easy to identify who everyone is. Again, this is best case scenario. I'm going to try my best and do better in that area. Just some quick thoughts on the intake of horses. We definitely want the haulers be third party, cart owners, friends, whoever. When they bring those horses in, we want them to unload those horses, and we want them to lead the horse to the enclosure and unhalter them. While they are doing that and they are in the enclosure with the animal, we can ask them if they will, you know, we should have the hip tag that we used last year, which we affixed to the, should have put a picture of it on here, that we affixed to the mane of the horses, which basically have their ID number on it. If we can have that particular person actually affix that to the horse, I think that's safer and better. If it's the owner, they already know the horse is calmer with them. Even if it's a third party, they've already taken that responsibility of the horse. They've loaded the horse, they unloaded the horse. They have at least a small relationship with that horse. So hopefully they will feel comfortable doing that piece of it. If they aren't, that's fine. Just let the horse settle in. We can go back and do that piece later. But that's how I would like to see that piece work. Kind of talking about the boards again. We have had site boards. We've had, in the site map, I mean the general overall area. So it shows where the bathrooms are. It shows where the main water spigots are. It shows where the fire extinguishers are. So kind of an overarching map. And then an enclosure map. That's kind of like the vet treatment map that you see there, that shows all of the enclosures and their numbers. It should really look the way it looked towards the end of, I believe it was the glass fire, which showed all the enclosures. It had the number and it had the name of the horse in it. I have huge boards, so there's no reason why we can't continue that this year. It just made it easier, I think, for everyone. The vet triage board, which we'll go over in a little while. We're going to go back to the quadrant assignments for those that were here last year. It's we designate certain rows to quadrants. It usually is a colored quadrant. So the first one may be blue, and then the next one is yellow. And so we're going back to the quadrants. There will be obviously a grain board, you know, the instructions for how the vets want grain done. There may be a separate one for just everyday grains, but we'll definitely want a couple grain boards, medication board, the just-in-time training boards, which are, I'll go over that later too. It's great little reminders and references in whiteboards or other things that are going to be kind of scattered throughout the shelters. And then the ICS charts, kind of just went over the overall one and the daily one. The vet triage board, which we did have both incidents last year, though I'm not sure everyone saw it. It's really for the leads to to use, but I think it's great for all of us to know about them and understand that they are there. It's usually located by the vet trailer, or if it's at a place that there is not a vet trailer, we'll have a designated area that the vets will know that they go to. And triage board is, you know, I used to work in an emergency room a long time ago, and triage is the same, what we're talking about here. It's basically having a list of all of your patients, and then you determine who needs to be seen in what order. And that's basically what our job is for the vets when they arrive, is to kind of give them an idea that, you know, oh, we saw a cut on this horse. You know, this horse was showing very, very, very mild colicking symptoms. Just anything that we notice that we feel that they should take a look at. Vets might not be happy with this, but I say let's write down as much as we can. They can determine that, oh, that's not a big deal. I would rather that they take a look and make that determination, and at least we've you know, it's better to be on the safe side by at least just having them take a look. And then again, when the vets arrive, they can kind of look at that and make a plan for their day, at least based off of that piece. Tape, we kind of did this last year. I've extended it out a little bit more just yesterday. We will still have the tape on the enclosures as a quick visual identifier. Red will still mean there's some type of aggression or something about this horse. Maybe they're blind, something. It just means don't go into that enclosure unless you've been, you know, told to by the lead or a vet. So if you see red, don't go in. Green was have its own hay. We'll probably still use that. Yellow, under vet care, it just means, you know, just pay extra attention. Don't feed without really looking at everything. It's just an easy way to visually go, oh, yellow, I have to stop and pay more attention. Purple is going to mean that they also get grain. Again, just another visual. Gray will probably be the panel number. And this is something that Heather and I were discussing yesterday, not set in stone, but I kind of like the idea, is having white tape with the name of a barn. So if there is a barn there with 5 horses, you know, we can say Edgington Barn next in white with on all 3 enclosures. That way we kind of know, hey, those horses know each other. If we're thinking of moving a horse for some reason, just kind of keep in mind that those are his buddies. And then blue, that one was more for more of like a pair or something, where we can say, you know, Sunny on one of them, and then on Sunny's we can say, you know, Smith or something, so that they know that those 2 are buddies, and really pay attention if you are moving them, or if you're doing something, you're probably going to get a reaction from the other one. Again, just thoughts, not saying it has to be that way, but it was something that came up. Biosecurity, obviously we'll still do the foot baths entering. We'll still do the manure with those large garbage cans that we fill up, you know, to about a quarter of the way with a bleach solution. We dip the forks in between, excuse me, in between animals, theoretically, that don't know each other, meaning they're not from the same barn. That's what I mean by unrelated, not actually blood related, but, you know, coming from a different property. And then we store the forks in those bleach stations when they're not being used. Cleaning, same thing. If a horse leaves or gets moved, we wipe the enclosure with a bleach solution. We bleach the water tubs. We bleach the grain bowls, and we let all of those, the bowls and the tubs, sit out in the sun to dry. Quick, very basic safe horse handling, remembering that we open the gates, and I am the worst offender of this, I will admit. We're not climbing through the panels, we're opening the gates. Do not go into an enclosure, obviously, if the horse's butt is to you. Never turn your back. I have a picture there of my daughter Heather's. She works at the neighbor's barn part-time, and a horse that she knew, it was food aggressive, and it just decided it didn't like Heather being next to the food, even though Heather was feeding it, and it decided to bite her. So I like this picture because it just reminds me that even a horse that you know well sometimes just can, if you're not paying attention and you get kind of, you just feel safe and you're not thinking about it, they can kind of, step out and snap at you. So it's just a reminder. Watch for the aggression too. And by aggression, I don't just mean that it's aggressive towards people. You may notice that it's aggressive towards other horses, but wonderful with people. Maybe it's only aggressive during feeding time. Maybe it's only really aggressive. It doesn't like a mare to be next to it. There's many types of aggression. So just make note of that. And we may have to switch them around if there's some type of issue, or at least during feeding time, remember to feed far away from the other horses and kind of in the middle of the enclosure. And then again, checking for the tape before you go near to the enclosure if it's red. See the just-in-time training, which we talked about. Was looking for a picture. This isn't exactly it, but it kind of gives you the idea. They'll be placed throughout the shelter. It's great for orientation and for references for all of us. I think they're really important, and they're just easy to have up, right? We can all use we can always use reminders. I know that was kind of a lot. Any questions? Any questions there?
I did see a couple things come to the chat. One question was, can we buy our own vest? Do you want to explain how the vests are handed out and what the protocol is for that?
Yeah. We have, for shelter, we have 3 different vests currently. We have the green ones that we had last year. They do not have Napa Cart logos on them. They are just green with reflective tape. We have a second one, which is a lighter color green, and that's going to be, for non-horse people, so I can see easily who really should be in with the horses and who shouldn't. And then the purple ones, which will be for leads, they do have the Napa Cart lettering and stuff on them. The reason those cost, I'm also the treasurer, so those cost about $22 per vest. And I don't think that we give them out very easily in terms of for permanent, to keep permanent, just because it can be used. How do we want to say it, Claudia? I just want to ensure that it's used appropriately, and that we're not misrepresenting Napa Cart at times that maybe are not during a deployment.
So our ASAR vests, we will hand out to disaster service workers who might have to leave from their home to evacuate or to deploy. But for shelter vests, we'll have you return them at the end of your shift, and we'll get them cleaned up and ready for the next person.
Yeah, what I pretty much do is I just spray them down with bleach and leave them out to kind of dry. And although I do take them home and actually wash them, but that might not happen every single day. But the spraying with Lysol will happen every day.
There was also a question to go back to your biosecurity slide, and you can do that if you like. We're watching time. for all of you, this we will have these notes available for training, and so you're more than welcome to reflect on them. And this is being recorded, so right before fire season, if you want to come back through and get a refresher, that's an option. There's your slide.
And this will be one of the just-in-time trainings that will be on a board somewhere within the shelter for easy reference, because this is obviously one of the most important pieces of it. We'll also be on how to properly, use the water, not letting the nozzle touch the water bucket from horse to horse. It'll be a little bit more detailed. This was just kind of an overarching, not going into as in-depth as the actual signs will be. Are we ready to move on to the next piece? I'm going to take that as a yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is getting a little bit more into the more animal specific. Again, this is not necessarily set in stone, so I don't want people to like memorize this. This is just kind of a good idea of what things are going to look like and what is expected in the different shifts. So first thing in the morning when you first come in, probably will be everyone, not just horse people, because I want it to, it's so important to me. I want it to be done immediately. I want you to go around and check every single horse. I want you to look at them. I want you to look for illness and injury, and look obviously to see if any of the enclosures are, tilted or, aren't structurally sound anymore. And while we are doing that, then the actual animal people, and then obviously if you saw something, you would tell the lead. The care sheets, which we have redone and we'll go in more detail later, you definitely are going to notate the manure output before anyone starts doing anything, water level, and then you were going to compare it to the night before. If there were 2 piles listed at the end of the shift prior and there's still only 2 piles left, you would definitely want to alert the lead, who would then make sure that the vets check that horse out. And I'll get in more detail with Claudia on exactly the number of piles, but we're gonna want to have a, if it's been less than 2 piles overnight or whatever that may be, making sure that you alert the lead. But you can do that when you're done. The no output is what we want to know immediately. And then probably putting on the fly masks. This is it. And then we can go on to feeding and such. This is more general. We're looking at 3 times a day for feeding. We talked about that before, where we want to do a lunch to keep the horses, give them something to do. These are roughly the times I'm thinking. We're going to go into water a little bit more. We're marking on the water buckets Saturday quarters so that we can easily identify. It was great that our waters were always topped off last year, but it made it very difficult to really identify who's drinking and who isn't. So we're going to back off in general on that and pay more attention and kind of go from there. So we'll go into more detail when we actually go to that piece. We're going to pick up manure less as well. It was great that they were so clean, but at the same time, it makes it hard to see what the output is. So we'll be more structured in when we pick up manure. We talked about the calling and texting of the owners. And then wellness checks is what I consider where you just walk around and really stop and pay attention to each horse individually and just kind of notate anything that looks unusual. Medications, we're hoping that when the vet trailer is there, that's where those medications will be stored. If there is no vet trailer, they will be stored in the shipping containers. We'll kind of talk about what those are. They will be administered by a vet or a vet technician. If that is not available, then the leads will be the one administering, and the vet boards, kind of went over that, will also be at the trailer or the shipping container. Grains, I'm thinking, are going to be stored in the shipping container. There should be plenty of room with everything moved out. And then that way it's closed up tight during the night. No horses can get out and get into the grains, nor little creatures. We talked about the grain boards and what they'll be, and then the grain itself will be prepared by either a vet or the leads most often. Daily chores. We're going to talk about, we have individual hay containers this year that they will need to be loaded. Buckets, waters need to be cleaned. Biostations need to be redone. The grain bowls need to be cleaned, and then remarking the buckets. This is just chores that can be done throughout the day at pretty much any time. Personal hay, I'm thinking particularly at the horsemen's, where we can kind of segregate the horses into one area. The hay area will be outside of that, and will be surrounded by panels, so that even if a horse was to get loose, it would be much harder for it to actually get into the hay and eat it, especially if there's alfalfa. Valley Brook will make it even wider between the hay and the enclosure, so that we can ensure that no horses can actually get to that hay if they were to get loose. And then we will have boards that identify what hay belongs to what horse, and the instructions for that. Closing time. So when we're leaving, we just want to ensure that all of the enclosures are closed. Notate the water level and the manure to check the next day. Remove any fly masks. Make sure that the pasture gates or the main gate at NVHA are closed. The grain station is closed, and the hay station is closed, and the hay is away from the edge. Any questions on that one? Again, those will all be on the just-in-time boards, so I'm not expecting that you remember specifically all of this by heart.
Sheila, two things. So one is, one was a question, will owners be feeding owner hay? And usually not. Usually we have the owners bring the hay, and then we coordinate feeding time with the other animals, because as you can imagine, if everybody's getting fed and one horse isn't, or vice versa, that creates trauma in the shelter. So great question. Ideally, we keep the horses on their own hay, or we wean them onto Napa cart hay over a couple days. The number one greatest thing we can do to cause colic is a sudden food change, so we really try to be careful about that. Another important note is that if you come in the morning and your first job is to kind of quietly walk through, don't even look at the hay area. If we start feeding, if anybody starts feeding, it's just a ruckus. So we kind of tiptoe around and we look. If a horse has less than 2 piles in its area, then we're not going to have you feed it. So this is the reason why we have you do that first. If we just throw the normal hay and that horse has had diminished output overnight and it eats while we wait to go and find the vet and do what we need to do, we haven't done it any favors. So when you see decreased output, you're going to take that to your lead, and then the lead will instruct you to maybe just feed a handful or something that keeps the horse quiet while the rest of the horses are getting fed, but we're not going to feed the normal amount. One other thing, Sheila, and we'll talk about this more on Saturday, is if you are there in the evening and it is safe to do so, and you have noted that there are 2 piles in the pen at 8 o'clock, ideally on your sheet, you're going to either say left in pen or removed from pen. Otherwise, just saying 2 piles at night, we're not going to know if the 2 piles that we see in the morning are new, or if those are the same 2 piles from last night. And again, we'll review a lot of this on Saturday. Saturday's going to be a fun day. I think that was all the questions, unless any of the chat monitors have any other ones come through. Okay.
Okay. I'm just going to go through Shelterly really quickly.
There was
oh, go ahead, Alan.
There was one other question. Did you have it? No. It says we want to be sure and have a policy on treats. That was an issue for some last year.
Yes.
And then there was another one. Did you have any thoughts about or
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that one, Alan.
Okay. The second one was, did you have any thoughts about soups or teas this year? I don't know what they mean by that.
Yes, I do. To answer the first one, I would really discourage treats. We did have an owner whose horse bit his hand pretty badly, actually. So even friendly horses that may act weird. It upsets the other horses. There's going to be exceptions, but I would say the answer is no, unless you've spoken with the lead and or the vet, and for some reason, if they deem it okay. But I think that would be an exception, certainly not the rule. The C's and the T's and the soup, yes, definitely. If the vets feel that is necessary and we have enough ability to be able to do that, at least on the horses that are on watch, I believe that will be something that will happen a lot during the course of the sheltering, especially towards the end when we start to see more of the colicky symptoms. I think it's something that we're going to see a lot of. I do have some small salt blocks too, not enough for everybody, but enough to be able to, if a vet deems that horse could really benefit from having that very small little salt block, and they're not going to, wolf it down all at once. Those are things that we would do, but it would be under a vet telling us to do it. I don't foresee us doing that automatically ourselves. Claudia, do you agree?
Yeah, correct. So in most cases, what'll happen is you guys will notice that the manure output is diminished or the horse has left some food behind. Horses don't tend to do that as a rule. You're going to bring that to the attention of your lead. So you're always going to bring your veterinary concerns, anything that you see, to your lead. The lead will have been introduced to the lead veterinarian, and those are the two that are going to talk. Okay. So if you see that horse's name will go on the add-on board for the vet to look at. Vet will make an assessment, and oftentimes the first step is to start them on teas or soups. It's an amazing tool that we have to try and head off a colic. And in most cases, the vets will handle that because there's sort of it's kind of a great way for us to assess a horse, is to look at its response to food and then to, sort of see what it does. So that is when those will be used. And colic prevention is really important. So you noticing a decrease in manure output or noticing that no water was drunk overnight, we're going to have lines on the buckets. You're going to see this. Then you bring that to the attention of your lead. Lead lets the vet know, and then we take it from there. And usually we'll handle special feeds.
Okay, I'm going to go over shelter lead very briefly. Most of you have probably heard of it or seen it. This is our piece of it. It is basically a database for all the information, helps track where the animals are, all that information. But we will be doing paper documents on everything. Everything will be done the same as last year on paper. The shelter lead will be in addition to. Obviously, if we run, websites are down, no electricity, that type of stuff. But we still will be doing all paper documents. So this is the shelter part of shelter lead, and these would be all of the different shelter sites. So if we're at Valley Brook, we would click on Valley Brook or Horseman's. This is the next level in, which is the shelter detail. Every row or quadrant would be set up here. So it tells me that in first quadrant, there's only 3 animals. There's 10 rooms. I've got room here for 7 horses, blah, blah, blah. It's a great, easy view for capacity. The next step in is the building detail. So each of these pasture G row 1 becomes this building, pasture G row 1. Here's all of the enclosures. It shows me where the animals are within those enclosures. And then, and then one more in from that is the individual enclosure. It's My Little Pony, who's a horse. You can put a picture in there of the animal. You go in a little farther and you get more information on it. It's great. I'm so excited to get involved in it. But, and we will have somebody who is in charge of data entry on this. We have a laptop and a printer, which I'll go over later. But I don't want to spend too much time on Shelterly, but it's great. I'm so excited. I can't wait to start using it. But again, everything will still be done on paper. This is just in addition to that. Kind of skip the questions on, or maybe Toby had a question. Questions on that piece of it. We can go into more detail once we're actually deployed and actually start getting in there and using it, because it's still very new. So I'm just gonna jump on.
You keep going. And one thing, guys, once we have actually a nice link to a Shelterly training, and we're just fine tuning it. It'll be an online virtual training that you can take yourselves. It's really good. So be looking for that. So those of you that like data entry, that want to get more involved with Shelterly, there will be more to come.
Okay, so now on to new things. I just wanted to thank these amazing people, Carol, Lynn, Mary, Claudia, Louisa, Jan, Paul, Heather. There were many others as well. These are the people that met outside of the deployment and went over a lot of this stuff that you're going to see, made a lot of decisions. Really, really, really helped me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll start with forms first. This is the revised care schedule. Kind of a lot has changed. One of the main things is there will be 1 page per day. So one of the things that we had a hard time with last year was knowing what each day was. You know, I mean, even though we had the day written, it was still hard in a quick just glance to see what the manure was, how much water was the horse fed, all of that type of very important information. I want to see it day by day. It's quick, it's easy, especially for the vets. Up here, we just kind of made an easy shorthand, if you will, that you can use down here. 2 pounds of grain mash plus a half a flake of grass hay soaked is what we fed. What was the manure like, and then any comments. Down here is kind of just a quick reminder too. We would like to see, and Claudia, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I had it at 8 piles within a 24-hour day minimum, and hopefully a full bucket within 24. If that may be adjusted as time goes on, but that's kind of our measurement to begin with. We're going to have the animal number, the enclosure number, and the name like we normally do. But again, 1 page per 1 day per sheet. It's double-sided, so you would just flip it over and continue on. This, to me, is probably one of, if not the most important thing that we can do documentation-wise, is really keeping these up. We need to slow down, take the time every single time to make sure that it's filled out. I think by limiting the manure pickup, water, and that type of stuff, hopefully we'll be better at making sure that we document everything that we see. Status was something that Claudia and I talked about last time, just really marking the status of the horse. Are they being quiet? You know, are they being agitated? Do they look injured? Depressed, alert, being, you know, what a normal horse would look like. And it's an easy way for the vet to look, oh, it was AAA and now it's going DDD. Okay, you know what I mean? That's just something to pay attention to. So when I look at the care sheet, I'm thinking, what is the vet going to see? What is the vet looking for here, right? Like, I don't know, a patient file at the hospital. So number one, in my opinion, thing that we really need to pay attention to, and hopefully we've made that a little easier this year. Moving on, intake, we kind of redid the intake form. We added quite a bit more. We moved some stuff around. So we tried to ask for feeding instructions from the owner? Did they bring their own hay? Getting approval that when their hay is gone, that it's okay to use the cart. Medication instructions. Are they coming in with any illness or injury? How did they get here? If it's by cart, who is that person, and the request for animal services number. And if it's coming in by a third party, who it is, what their number is, and all that information. And then a place for the unification notes when they go out. So having this filled out in triplicate forms, which we have, hopefully we can get a little bit more information on the intake form that will help later on down the road. The master list, we updated this. This is on a legal form, so it's long. There's information, a little bit more room for information. Also a yes and no for the forms. Have they been signed? Kind of more of just a reminder that there are forms that need to be signed when they come in and when they go out. Strikeouts. So if you start out in enclosure 102, but then we moved you to 165, cross out once so we can still kind of read where they were. If they're under vet care, I would like the date put in there. And then when they are no longer under vet care, just cross it out. This is kind of the quick, easy way for us to know outside of Shelterly, kind of how many horses do we currently have. We also added what city they're from, so that when we know that Angwin has been lifted, we can easily look through and say, oh, we have 10 horses from Angwin that we probably should think about calling their owner or texting and see what we're going to do about discharging, that type of information. It's just easier to have it in one place. And then unification notes, we did a lot of calling and texting, so having an area there where we can kind of keep track of that, we think will be a help. Volunteer sign in, kind of same, but I did add just a checkbox for, was the liability form filled out for the event, and then was the 214 filled out? We'll go into a little bit more in the exacts in the forms. And has that person been sworn in either overall for Napa Cart or at least for the event? Again, just a quick way to hopefully a reminder to do it and also to see what has been done. Liability release for the owners, we moved some of the information that was on the intake form over to here. So now there's, we kind of incorporated it in here so that we do have an agreement, all of the liability of having your horse here, and that I understand, blah, blah, blah. It's, we just kind of added, and also that the vet care, understand that vet care may be provided to the owner if we can't get a hold of you. So we kind of wanted to streamline that into one form. And then obviously when they leave, we, very important, need to have whomever is taking the animal sign it, and all of that. That did not happen as often as we needed it last year, but that's definitely something that we need to really, both places need to make sure that we get a signature from someone, whether it be the Napa Cart, the third party person and owner. If for some reason they don't want to, mark it on there so that we know that we didn't just forget. And then obviously I would be calling Claudia immediately if somebody refused to do this, but that's secondary. The volunteer forms, you need to fill out the liability ones. You need to, I bought little clocks that will sit on the desk that are set to military time to remind people that that's what they need. The care sheet, the volunteer check-in and out sheet has to match the 214s in terms of time. So if you show up at 7:02 and you write 7:02 on your 214, you have to write 7:02 on that check-in sheet. I had to go back last year and kind of readjust a lot of it to make sure that they matched. So if we can remember to do that. I'm also for shelter. This is just shelter. Your 214s are going to stay at the shelter. So You can start to fill it out. There's a binder. It's in alphabetical order. When you leave, you'll just put the time that you left. If you come back another time during that incident, you can continue on that 214. It will be in the folder. You can just go right to it. But it's just too easy to forget the 214s. I feel that it's better if you just keep it, if we keep it. So hopefully that's not a problem for anybody. Now that was kind of a lot, but we really spent a lot of time on the forms and tried our best to kind of fill in some gaps that were missing. So hopefully we did that and make it a little bit easier for everyone. Are there any questions on that?
Sheila, why don't you keep going if you have more, and we can answer the questions at their end. There was some questions about watermarking and badges, but we'll handle that at the end.
Okay. Yeah, and that might be answered here. So now we're going to talk about some equipment updates. So we got hay containers, we got new vests, we got more wheelbarrows so that we can tell the difference between manure and hay just by look. We got enclosure buckets for the individual horse information at the enclosures. I ordered a manure ramp. We talked about how to put together the panels correctly. The new clocks we talked about. We have shipping containers now. I got some stronger tape. I've got new places to hook up hoses at the Horseman's. We're marking the water buckets. We got Shelterly. We got laptops. We got printers. And we got a lot of new signage. The personal hay containers, this is what they look like. They will hold 1 day's worth of hay, so a couple flakes. Grain, I'm thinking in the morning shift, if it needs grain, the leads can make up the grain, and then literally these lock. You could put the grain in there so that when it's time to feed, that particular person just takes out the grain, adds water to it, and it's done. You don't need to measure anything. I did get some these little totes that you carry wood in that are great for carrying a couple flakes of hay from the personal hay storage place to these, and these containers will be outside of the individual horse's enclosure with that horse's name and enclosure number on them. The vests we kind of went over. Purple will be for leads. The regular green will be for the volunteers. Light green are for the non-horse volunteers. Blue, I believe, was the veterinarians. And then we also have these aprons. They're like aprons for waitressing that have pockets that you can hold things in need be. We also, for the quadrants, I have, there'll be specific colors. You'll be assigned a quadrant that will be your horses. They will have a manure and a hay wheelbarrow that is just for your quadrant, manure forks and biosecurity tubs that are just for your quadrant. I got some white buckets, so they're easy to see between the Home Depot ones that we're using for the individual horses. Each quadrant will have one of those buckets by it. It will have extra zip ties, tape, pins, extra care sheet, some cutters, anything that you can think of that you might need for your quadrant. And then a couple of these little totes that you can take stuff from that white bucket as you're walking around and kind of keeping with you so that hopefully you're not running around all the time looking for something. The equipment will be easier to find and closer to everyone. Again, we talked about the separate hay and manure. Valley Brooks is slightly different than the Horseman's, but they definitely look different, and we'll mark them. But I think it will be easier to not to get them mixed up this time. And the enclosure buckets. We have a Home Depot bucket with a lid for every enclosure. So the care sheets, the intake forms, any of that will go inside of this bucket with the top on it. And then this little handle will be affixed to part of the enclosure or not, depending on the horse, but it will keep the horse from nibbling on it, from the wind from blowing things away, etc. So that's what we came up with for that. The ramp we talked about, it was hard at the Horseman's to kind of get the wheelbarrows up and into the manure container. So I purchased 2 of these. They're adjustable. They are more than the 32 inches across that the biggest wheelbarrow we have is. So there should be no problem getting the wheelbarrow into the manure containers, hopefully. These are the little clocks to help with military time. These are the shipping containers. The gray one is at Valley Brook. This beige one is at the Horseman's. This is where I would say about 90 to 95% of the equipment is stored. So that actual trailer that I have here at my house, that has extras in it. So even if I'm not here and someone else needs to go and kind of get things set up, most of what you need are going to be in these containers, which is wonderful. And that's where you'll be storing grain and medications if the vet trailer isn't there. It's very secure. I'm extremely happy that we have those this year. It really makes it easier. Again, the tapes, I did try some stronger ones, though I have a few of the older ones left, which I really would like to use first. But I did take into consideration that people were asking for stronger tapes. The water buckets. Here's an example of one that I did quickly at my house. It's in quarters. We talked about only filling it twice a day, with exceptions, of course, if the vet says or if the horse needs it more. But again, checking it first thing in the morning. I bought very special markers that are oil-based Sharpies that seem to work very well, even with scrubbing. So I think for the most part we'll be okay, but if we notice that it's starting to get low, I have some of those. I have a whole bunch of these 97-cent Home Depot measuring paint things, so we can easily remark them if need be. The laptops and printers, Valley Brook and the Horseman's each have their own laptop. It's a tough book, so it's quite rugged. They also have a printer. So the laptop is for Shelterly. It's also for an emails for the request for animal services to come in, and then we can print them out. The printer, we can print out Shelterly information. We can print out copies of any forms that we need. If something gets mangled or something and we want to make a copy of it, we certainly can. Signage, I got many different things. We have this bigger livestock shelter that will go out in the front of Valley Brook and the Horseman's to hopefully help people find it. I have a couple of all three of these other ones sitting here that are for signage to help direct people coming in, and then the sandwich boards and the whiteboards are for signage for us at the shelter to remind us and for logging things. Just in interest of time, I might go just to the next one really quickly, if that's okay. This is just some miscellaneous shelter information. Again, the two different hoses at the Horseman's. Valley Brook is much easier. They have a whole bunch of different spigots, so it's not so much of a problem. But the Horseman's, I foresee a hose coming from the north and the south in each row. So hopefully we won't have to be dragging them as far. So that's what I'm trying to do this year. Reminder that at all shelters, speed limit is 5. We did get complaints from people that horse trailers, but as well as volunteers, were driving more than 5 miles an hour. So just to be cognizant of that, especially at the Horseman's, where they actually move their horses back and forth across the road that we are traveling down. So just kind of keep that in mind. Parking at Valley Brook, if you remember from last year, this is Valley Brook, and we want to park on El Centro or Heather Lane, which is the side street there. We are not parking in Valley Brook Center itself. There just isn't enough room. So keep that in mind if you are volunteering. The Horseman's, it's the same place as it was last year, behind the concession stand where the arrow is pointed is where you would want to park, and then walk down to where the shelter is. Saturday, kind of an overall what to expect. We're going to be moving panels, chaining them, and I bought quite a few of the clamps, which we will be tying or affixing certain panels together to give more strength. I do have a demo, but we don't have to go over it right now of safe, or actually we're going to have a live demonstration. One of the horses at the Horseman owner, Debbie Hamilton, has agreed to bring her horse down in the beginning of the morning, and we're going to do a demonstration of how to lead the horse in and out of the enclosure safely. We're going to have a water tub marking station because we need to mark all of those. And then Claudia is going to have a observation tips for maintaining health while in the shelter. So there'll be different areas that you can kind of move in and out of throughout the day that we are there. Is a demonstration on how to do it, but we actually have this set up so we can give the actual demonstration live at the shelter. Now, can I go? There we go. This is a quick outline. Don't laugh. I did this today in like 5 minutes, really quickly. Rule of thumb is the chains are going to be facing the openings, and then the middle ones are going to be facing south. Once you're there and you see this, it will make sense. And last year they weren't assembled properly, so we had a lot of panels that weren't that would fall over, or if you opened a gate, another gate would fall over. So this year, hopefully, we're going to eliminate any of those issues. We do, again, I'm going to do another plug for the Livestock Ag for Youth people. We need someone who's wanting to work with all of these wonderful animals. We do, though, again, need to be respectful of the resident animals that are there, because there will still be animals there besides our animals right next to Cart's animals. So we just want to be respectful of that. And then if you're interested in working, again, these are leadership positions that we need filled, and the becoming the member is what we've gone over in other trainings. You need CERT, 100 and 200 of ICS, having attended one of the volunteer trainings, either at another CART that is approved or NAVDAG. If you, this is where you can go for those trainings. And then this is the CERT when and if it's available. Hopefully there'll be more this year, maybe. And then this is my information. Again, if you are interested in any of the roles, specifically the leadership roles, please email me and I will be sure to include you on some meetings that we're going to have to kind of go over different things together. And stuff. And that's my number for texting, or if you have any questions that you want to talk to me directly about. And that's pretty much it for me. We have questions on the last stuff.
In the interest of time, let's I'll answer one of the questions, and then a lot of this stuff we're going to discuss on Saturday. So those
Saturday.
Hopefully many of you can make it on Saturday. Sheila, it's an amazing amount of work and preparation that goes into this. And I encourage all of you to really, this is one of the nicest shelter operations I've ever seen. And I have seen many. And so Sheila, hats off to you and your team. It's really well organized. And I love that all the volunteer input comes in year after year, and we adjust, and all of you volunteers make it better and better with your suggestions. So really nice. One thing that came up, one question that came up was about badging. We are still working on badging. We're in a holding pattern right now with Napa County. They have so many things going on. So we may or may not have badges by the time fires roll in, but our vests for now are our badge. And then the other question was, would the forms be available? We'll bring forms with us on Saturday, and you're welcome to take them home. And then we'll make them available on the website for all of you, so that if you want to take time to get to know the forms better, we can do that. And certainly let's take some time together as a team when we go through the assessment part of the training on Saturday to really talk about the forms and make sure everybody understands what, how they're used and why. Watermarking. We are going to track water consumption at the shelter this year. We're actually trying to do a little study with UC Davis to look at some different ways to encourage water consumption, because that's probably our biggest problem with colics in the shelter. So when you are tracking water, those markings, and you'll see this on Saturday, that's a 20-gallon tub, and those are 4 markings in there. So each marking is 5 gallons. So when you report on that sheet at the time to fill the water again, you under water consumed, you would see how many of those quadrants have been filled, and you can guess a little bit, and we'll go over this on Saturday. But if it drank 5 gallons, if it drank 10 gallons, if it drank sort of 1.5, that's 7 gallons. That's what you're going to notate, and then you're going to fill the water back up. Okay, so we'll discuss this. It's really good information for the vets. Most horses on a hot day, big horse, can drink 20 gallons of water on a hot day. On an average day, they'll drink around 10. So a lot of variability there. If you're ever concerned or confused about water, talk to your lead. We're all learning, but one of our goals is to improve shelter medicine and keep these horses drinking. Megan, do you want to do a WhatsApp? Are we in a position to send out an alert to everybody so that they're part of the shelter group?
Yeah, I've added pretty much everybody. There were a couple people that didn't pop up in WhatsApp when I was creating this group. So if you don't get an alert that you've been added to this group, then maybe send me an email at info@NapaCart and we can figure it out. A couple things, you know, if you don't have WhatsApp, you may want to get it. And then if you have it, but haven't updated recently, that could be why maybe you're not receiving messages or showing up. So anyway, I'm gonna hit send, and everybody should get a notification that they've been added to this group. And you can respond back with a, you know, received or copy or thumbs up. But anyway, here we go.
And then WhatsApp etiquette for you guys. The way we try to use WhatsApp is if you get a notification, we're usually going to give you an instruction in that notification to contact us again via a different mechanism, meaning we're going to try and limit the amount of chatter on WhatsApp and keep it to real sort of simple transfer of information. You might occasionally see us reach out to you, like if we have a different need in shelter, if we need a small number of volunteers to do a task for us, or if we have to set up some panels somewhere else, you might get a little whisper from us on WhatsApp. But in those cases, it'll usually say, please respond your availability to info@NapaCart, because we're trying to minimize all the pings that everybody's going to get on WhatsApp. So I've got mine, and it looks like people are responding, so that's great. We are really, really thankful to all of you for spending time with us this evening. Sheila, well done, and all of the NapaCart team. There's some amazing leaders on here tonight that are putting a lot of time in. And we'll plan to see you all on Saturday morning at 1200 Foster Road. Sheila, are we starting at 9 o'clock?
Yes, Debbie can bring her horse down between 9 and 9:30, so that would probably be one of the first things that we'll do in the morning.
Wonderful. So we'll plan on seeing you. It's probably going to be sunny and warm, so bring a hat, bring some sunscreen, bring some water. We'll have some of that too. And we really appreciate you all, and thank you for joining us.